Hi. If you're joining us today, welcome. Always nice to see people show up. This is not my normal time, but I'm doing it today because I really wanted to get this out to you. It's crucial news about Italy if you're thinking of moving here, and most of my posts, if you regularly follow, are about Italy, living in Italy, and what you need to know if you're thinking of moving here, buying property here, etc. That's what this channel is about. If you're new here, my name's Amanda, and we're going to be chatting about the medical care in Italy as it stands in 2025. So, you probably saw from the title that there's some problems with medical care and access to medical care in Italy. So I have defined the south, but there are many villages across Italy, and I will get to that. Let's first read this article that actually have an issue in terms of access to medical care. And when you consider that many people are coming to Italy because they know that there is so-called free medical care, socialized medical care, and are leaving countries like the States and other countries where they don't have access to free medical care, it's very important that you make the right decision. So that's why we're covering this issue. And whether you're watching the live now or you watch it back later, you can always leave me a question. In the description box will be all the details and the article if you want to look into it more. Okay, great. So I'm going to read this article for you. It was published on CNN, on BBC, on various well-known news sites, so it's not just speculation. Okay, so in a small village has banned its residents from becoming seriously ill. It sounds quite ironic, doesn't it? People living in Belcastro are ordered to avoid contracting any illness that may require emergency medical assistance. A decree from local mayor Antonio Torchia states. Belcastro sits in the southern region of Calabria, one of Italy's poorest. So Calabria would be beneath Napoli, beneath Rome, obviously, south of Rome. Torchia said the move was obviously provoked by the fact that it was having an effect more, and he did it because he had already put out urgent notices to the regional authorities, but he thought this would be a better way, in a kind of humorous way, a bit ironic, I think, to get the attention of the local population rather than putting out an official notice, which he said were completely ignored. So, to regional authorities to highlight the shortcomings of the local healthcare system. Around half of Belcastro's 1,200 residents are over the age of 65, like many of these villages, and the nearest accident and emergency, in other words, pronto soccorso, as it's called in Italy, is over 45 kilometers away, 28 miles away, the mayor said. He added that the A&E was only reachable by a road with a 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. So it's pretty twisty and windy, you can guarantee. You're not going to be ripping along there in a quick ambulance. The village's on-call doctor surgery is only open sporadically and offers no cover during the weekends, holidays, or after hours. So there's no doctor. Surgeon General is generally what it's called in an emergency or in an accident. Torchia told Italian TV that it was hard to feel safe when you know that if you need assistance, your only hope is to make it to A&E on time, and that the roads were almost more of a risk than any illness. One wonders if anybody checks this mayor's speech, but in a way I'm glad that he has been so candid, because that's how these things come out into the light. Otherwise, we just believe that everything's fine. As part of the decree, residents have also been ordered not to engage in behaviors that may be harmful whatever that could be, I don't know. And to avoid domestic accidents. I think it's quite hard to avoid domestic accidents. Surely accidents just happen. It's not as if people sort of make them happen. And not to leave the house too often. It's astounding, isn't it? It sounds like a sitcom. To travel or practice sports. In other words, you should avoid in any behaviors that may be harmful. I don't know what that means. Does that mean don't get drunk? Does that mean, I don't know, don't walk upstairs? I have no idea. And not to leave the house too often, travel or practice sports. So that covers the whole gambit of human movement. And to instead rest for the majority of the time. So basically what this mayor is saying of Belcastro, which is in Calabria in the south of Italy, is don't go out, don't have any accidents in your home like you have any control of accidents, don't leave the house often, don't travel, and don't practice any sports. It is unclear how these new rules will be enforced, if at all. There's a little bit of humor there, I think, at least by the author of the BBC article. The sparsely populated region of Calabria, the tip of Italy's boot, in other words, the part of the boot that almost connects with Sicily, is one of the country's poorest. Political mismanagement and mafia interference have decimated its healthcare system, which was put under special administration from the central government almost 15 years ago. So this has been the case for 15 years. This is not a recent thing. The point is, by him putting out this article to the TV news, he has highlighted again, which I guess is a good thing, at least for the local population, and certainly for anybody visiting family there or thinking of going on a holiday there. Rome-appointed commissioners have had difficulties tackling the vast levels of debt faced by hospitals. Now, it's a known fact that much of the south of Italy, and by the way, not only the south of Italy, many small villages in central and north Italy too, if you're not in a major city, they have vast debts, and so the hospitals are actually not functioning, meaning Calabrians remain crippled by a serious lack of medical personnel and beds, as well as interminable waiting lists. Italy's Calabria has two pandemics, COVID and the mafia. Okay. 18 of the region's hospitals have closed since 2009. So I'm going to read that again. 18. So in a region where there weren't many hospitals anyway, 18 of that region's hospitals have closed since 2009. So since 2009, the financial crisis was in 2008. Lots of stuff went down in Italy. But since 2009, which is the year following, 18 of the region's hospitals have closed. As a result, almost half of Calabria's nearly 2 million residents, so it's quite a few people, seek medical assistance outside of the region. Okay, so that's hardly surprising, is it? Since the hospitals are closed. I'm interested what you guys think about this. If you're just joining us now, you can certainly go into the chat box down there. Tell us your name and your city. Why don't you? I always enjoy knowing who's joining us and why. It's great to know. So in the chat box, just your cities, fine. In 2022, it was announced that Cuba, the country, would send 497 doctors to the Italian region over 3 years to work in various medical facilities, obviously to make up the shortfall that existed locally. Regional Governor Roberto Occhiuto said last year that these doctors had saved Calabria's hospitals. Well, obviously not enough of them, if so many villages don't have access to one. But I guess some of them were saved. Okay. Belcastro residents told local media that Mayor Torchia had done the right thing in shining a light on the issue. I would think so. And that the decision would shake consciences. I'm not sure how shaking consciences is going to happen when there's no A&E for nearly 2 million residents. He has used provocative language and a decree to attract attention to a serious problem, one man said. Okay, so Belcastro is like many villages in the south, and as I pointed out before, not only the south. So regularly people ask me when we're doing the podcast about Italy, or they're thinking of moving to Italy, or they're thinking of buying a house in Italy, what do you think about these 7% regions in the south of Italy that are literally paying people to come and live here? So Belcastro will be one of, I don't know if you can see that on my laptop. Can you? Belcastro, a nice hill town, like many in Italy. So many of these towns and cities across Calabria, and not only Calabria, which, as I mentioned, is south of Napoli, have been offering money, paying people to come and live there because they're deserted, they've been depopulated, and therefore they do not have enough tax coming in, municipal tax, to pay for the facilities of hospital, a clinic, or indeed an A&E department. So let's get to this issue. So this is an interesting way that he's managed to tackle this, having put up various notices, official notices and decrees. He's decided to make a joke and to tell people, well, it's quite a serious joke. As they say, the greatest truths are spoken in jest. So he's basically said to them, don't go to hospital. Don't do anything that could put you in danger of having an accident. I guess by that he means don't drink too much. Don't eat the wrong foods if you have a health condition. I don't know. What else could make you have an accident at home? Don't use a knife to cut stuff. Don't walk upstairs. Can you imagine all the accidents that could happen in your home that would lead you to go to A&E for stitches? You could, I don't know, cut yourself with a pair of scissors even. Anyway, all of that's been banned in this village. But let's talk about the serious issue of healthcare in Italy, because as I mentioned at the beginning, and if you just come in, you need to go back to the beginning of this where I read the article. You can watch it back anytime and leave me a comment or a question. What about healthcare in Italy? Now, I've done some other posts on this, but I felt I needed to do this dedicated post today because it comes up all the time when I'm assisting people to move to Italy, when I'm helping them with their documents, their relocation. The number one reason they usually quote as to why they're thinking of coming to Italy was the healthcare. Okay. So it depends who you listen to and who you read. Italy varies from number 10 in Europe to number 1. It depends who's writing the article. There is state health care in Italy. It's not exactly free. I'll cover it because I've covered it before and I'll cover it again. Okay, you have a health card. Perhaps I'm going to get my health card so I can show you. And so that will help you. 1 second while I get my health card. Okay, so here we are. I'm back. Clackety clack. Okay, what your health card looks like. I just need to cover up some of the crucial information. That's what the health card looks like. Let me see with this bright light where you can see it. It says Tessera Sanitaria. It has the date of expiry here, there, and basically has all my details. On the back, it also has all my details written and my particular number. You see that? So if you have a card and it has a magnetic strip, so this is a biometric card, can be put in and will be put in when you go to hospital or A&E. They'll slip this into the machine. It'll bring up all your history. It'll bring up everything, the tax you pay in Italy, everything. Everything is recorded on this. And if you don't have one, it's pretty difficult. Going to A&E, of course, like every country, depends on which city you're going in. But let's talk about a big city like Rome or Milan. If you were brought in from a car accident in an ambulance, yes, they will admit you and save your life, and then start asking questions. And if you don't have one of these, then you'll get a bill. But obviously, if you are part of the Italian healthcare system, you won't. But this thing on the back of here is called team. And what does team mean? Team means if you don't have all the stuff written here, it means that you are not registered. I'm an Italian citizen. And so all Italian citizens have this card, but also foreigners who have permanent residence here have this card. Okay, but some of them have team on the back, which means you can go anywhere in Europe and be treated. So that's your tessera sanitaria. So let's go back to the medical situation. So I have been saying for some time to people who ask me, what about this city? What about that city? What about bigger cities in the south like Salerno or whatever? I don't know. I don't live in those cities, but I've helped quite a few people to move there. And it really depends on your particular situation. And this is why I try to say, if you get your information on moving to Italy or relocating to anywhere in Europe or Facebook, it's really just, the state is the only one who can make this decision on your behalf. So if you are relying on Facebook and discussions on Facebook about what Joe said and what Sally said, whatever, everyone's situation is different. Everyone's earnings are different. Everybody's is different. But let's talk about Italian healthcare. Okay, so Milan is the main center. Lombardia is one of the most populated regions in Italy. And so Milan is kind of the capital of Lombardia. It has most of the major specialists in Italy medically. It has a huge oncology center, has a huge heart hospital, has lots of different specialities in and around Milan. Rome also has some major hospitals, children's hospitals, special hospitals, all of that, okay? Torino, another big city, has medical specialities, etc. Various university hospitals, top university centers like Bologna, Padua, they also have top flight medical situations because they run medical schools, and this is where most of the medical professionals in Italy and the doctors and specialists study. Pavia is another center. Okay, so aside from all of these major centers, let's just look at the medical situation with your tessera sanitaria in any other center. Okay, let's say you don't want to go to the south, as we just discussed. You need to go back and watch if you just come in. But let's say you're not near Belcastro, you're not near Calabria, which we just spoke about, that has very few hospitals operating now. I've been living here for 22 years, and for those 22 years, and much of that I worked in Milan and around Milan, between Lake Como, where I lived, and Milan. And let me tell you, 90% of the people that I've ever met in Italy who came up for treatment to Milan came from the south. Yeah, so people have been coming from Sardinia, south of Italy, all over Sicily to get treatment in Lombardia, in Milan or around Milan or Bologna, whichever center, for decades. Why? One, because there's a waiting list, and I will explain how the waiting list works. Two, because the hospitals in the south have been underfunded, as we just discussed. The mafia actually stripped them. There's been a lot of bureaucracy, and so the hospitals in the south were defunded. A lot of them are in debt because the towns they are attached to, the cities they are attached to, have been depopulated, and therefore the tax isn't coming in, and therefore they can't maintain these facilities. A lot of this doesn't get spoken about. Perhaps if you lived in that town, you'd know about it, or if you lived in the region, you'd know about it. But if it didn't concern you, why would you worry about it? I'm doing this today because this article has illustrated just one of these towns. And as he mentioned, there were 18 hospitals have closed down since 2009 just in his region. So let me know if this is the first time you're watching me, by the way. When you watch this back in the comments, let me know if this is the first time you're watching me. Great. So what does this mean? This means that if you're thinking of coming to Italy because you're leaving the States, because you find the medical care is not up to scratch for you, because you can't get the medical cover that you want, or you're coming from Australia and you're hoping to get socialized medical care in Italy, or you're leaving the UK because you've always dreamed of living in Italy, or you're coming from another EU country, Ireland, which is in a mess at the moment. By the way, my next week's post will be on Ireland. I don't know, Holland, anywhere. And you're imagining that if you buy this lovely house in the sun down in Italy and you retire or whatever, that you will have European Union healthcare. Well, apparently, according to what is reported, you will, according to what the locals live and according to what perhaps you don't know before you go there, you probably won't. And that is the problem with Italy. And having lived here for 22 years, through the ups and the downs and all the things, I can honestly say to you, I have always been 1 hour from Milan, except when I started in Tuscany. And when I started in Tuscany, it was in 2002. Most of the hospitals were still funded quite well. I was near a very big teaching hospital, which is still a very big teaching hospital near Pisa. I was in Lucca. So Pisa is one of the teaching hospitals attached to Pisa University, of course. So I've never been more than an hour from a hospital, a big teaching hospital. So I've lived in a tiny village in Como, where I spent many of my years, but it was literally 30 minutes by train, maybe 40 minutes by train to Milan. So I've never been in a region. I've traveled to every corner of this country, to the smallest villages all over. I've traveled Italy extensively, so I know what's going on, including to Sardinia, including to the islands, including all of it. But when you live in a small town, a village, which many people are being encouraged to come and repopulate, and you can buy into these villages, or you can buy €1 house, or not even if it's not a €1 house, a cheap house that you can renovate. You have to look at the big picture. Because let's say something happened, and lots of things can happen in life. Let's say you had a major medical crisis. By a major medical crisis, I'm talking about an aneurysm, a heart attack, you have a stroke, whatever. You're here, you've just got here, you're coming to live here, you're renovating your place, you have this medical emergency that you haven't foreseen, you can't speak the language yet. And the end result is you'll end up having to go back to the States at great cost, or Australia or UK or wherever it was you originated from, because you cannot get medical care that you need urgently in that moment. Yes, the system exists. Yes, the system could help you and probably has helped some locals that year. But if it doesn't work for you personally, it doesn't help whatever it says on the piece of paper that you got from the consulate when you decided to move here. So my situation is, as I'm telling you, having helped many people to move to the south, to the islands, to wherever, I've never been more than an hour from a major teaching hospital. And to be very frank with you, I would never want to be. I haven't had any major medical. I haven't had a heart attack. I do have a genetic arrhythmia, but it's never given me much trouble. But I have had a knee operation. I had to have a knee. I have had a knee replacement. That was scary. That was seriously scary. The waiting list attached to that, all the procedures and everything. Perhaps I will cover that in a separate post. But let me just tell you, I have been in hospital in Italy more than once, and it was damn scary for many reasons. It's not that there wasn't a good medical professional. The primario, who is the head of department, He's normally run off his feet. So there's one of him. And then he has people under him, registrars, as we would call them in the rest of the world. And they are working up to becoming a fully fledged specialist in whatever field. In this case, it was orthotic, knees, orthopedics. And I've been in hospital, because of my arrhythmia. So in that case, cardiology. Basically, in Italy, if you take your card and you decide you need to see a cardiologist, so your first step will be you take this card and you register to have a family doctor. So here comes the first headache that you may encounter as a foreigner in Italy. You need a doctor. You need a family doctor, because without that family doctor, it's going to be nigh impossible for you to get any visits, to get any scripts, to get any medicine, to get anything. You need a family doctor. And many of these small villages, we're just speaking about living in the south or living in any small village. It doesn't have to be the south. Could be in Marche, could be in Tuscany, could be in, I don't know, up in the Alps in the north, okay? You would have to have a family doctor. A lot of the very small villages, they've had one family doctor or two. He may have retired due to old age, and he hasn't been replaced because there are less and less doctors for a few reasons. We just heard that in this town in the south, in Belcastro, they brought in 367 Cuban doctors just to try and help the situation in the past decade. It clearly wasn't enough because these hospitals are still closed. But you can't find a family doctor. You can't find your GP, and you need your GP. That's the beginning. I'm pretty sure you need a GP in every country, and Italy is no exception to this. But the fact remains, you might struggle to find that GP if you live in a town where the 3 doctors or the 4 doctors, depending on how big your town is, they've all got more than their 1,000 patients. They only allowed 1,000 patients, and if they have more than 1,000 patients, it's not going to happen. Okay, so their list is full and they can't take you. And you could go to a nearby town or nearby village. I hope you get lucky, but these are things you need to know. So let's say you have the doctor. You go to your doctor. They give you a script. Okay, the script for the visit. The visit could be for an X-ray, a scan, or what they call a first visit, to see a cardiologist, to see an orthopedic specialist. Okay, so you take your script and you go and you make an appointment. And to make an appointment with that script, you go to something called ASL, who manage all the health situation in Italy in every region. So you go to ASL and you ask, I need an appointment to see a cardiologist, your nearest appointment, please. And you wait in a queue, and eventually they help you and they say, okay, we've got an appointment. Do you want it close by here? Yes, I'd like it to be in my town. Let's say you live in, I don't know, let's not do Milan or Torino, because that would be easy. Okay, it's a bigger one. There's more opportunities. But if you were living in a small town on the lake, let's say, let's take an example. Belgirate, just down the road from me on the beautiful Lake Maggiore. They would say, do you want something close by? And you would say, yes, please. And they'd say, okay, let's look at all the hospital. Borgomanero, sorry, they're full. I can get you an appointment in 6 months' time. Oh, okay. Is there nothing sooner? Well, yeah, we could. Novara, we could give you something in Novara. That's in 2 months' time. Just the appointment, not the operation, not whatever you need, just the first appointment, the first consultation. Okay, so you decide, okay, I've got to make this happen. So I'm going to take this appointment in 2 months' time in Novara. So you do that, and then they give you this piece of paper that says you need to be at this hospital, in this department, on that floor, at that time, and you will see your specialist. So you go there, you wait your turn, and eventually, if you're lucky, the specialist maybe sees you 1 hour late or maybe 2 hours late, depending how many emergencies he's had or whatever. But it's usually in the ambulatoria, which is downstairs, the visiting rooms for the doctors, the consulting rooms downstairs in the hospital, usually. but it could be in a building aside. Okay, whatever. So now he says, okay, you're going to need, let's say this is an orthopedic guy. Let's talk about something I know about. So, and he says you need a knee replacement. And you say, well, I'm in huge pain. I can't go on anymore. And he says, you need to go on a little bit longer, because the longer you wait, the better, because we don't want to do the knee replacement too soon, because that means that, you can only have one. So it's better that the later the better. Okay. So eventually you go back for another visit a year later, and he says, okay, now we need to do this operation. You can't walk anymore. You're in huge pain, whatever. And so you go on a list if you're really lucky. But before you go on that list, if you want that specialist to see you, if you want that specialist to operate on you, you have two choices, okay? One, you see him privately. So you make an appointment with his private secretary in his private clinic. You go and see him or her. It's usually a him if it's orthopedics, because they've got to wrestle the big bones of the body. And you see him privately, and you pay up to about 200. It's 180, 200 in Milan to see any kind of specialist. You pay that to see him, and he says, okay, we need to do this operation. So you need to pay to see him. You have two choices. You can have a private clinic, which I can't imagine how much it costs. I've never had it, but I think about 60,000 for a knee replacement, or maybe more. And all the care afterwards, because you need 2 weeks of convalescence. So you've got to pay for that daily rate. Or you're going to want him to operate on you, but he's going to operate in the hospital, in his hospital that he is the primario of, okay? So he's going to operate on you in this hospital, but you have to first, in order to see him and to get on his list, you have to pay to see him privately. You cannot go to the hospital visit and say, I want Dr. Rossi. No, you can't choose your doctor in the hospital situation. You go there, they give you an appointment, you see whoever's on call. So if you're going for a first orthopedic visit, you see whichever doctor is doing the visits that day. You're not going to see the primario, that's for sure, because he's running the whole department. He is the head of department. Okay? So you say, I'd like to have the primario do my knee replacement. And they say, no, you can't. If you want the primario, you have to make an appointment. You have to see him privately in his clinic. Okay, but there's another way, and that's how I had my knee replacement, and that is that you pay to see him as a patient privately, and then he, if he wants to, he's not obliged to, he can put you on his slate. And in my case, I had to wait a year, okay? So the year's up, and now you're going to have your operation, and you're going to have to follow all the protocol, and you're going to have to be operated on by him and his team. So he may do the operation, and then his team do the cleanup and the stitching up and the follow-up. That's how it works, okay? That's how the system works. But my dearest friend just 2 weeks ago needed an eye operation. She had waited about 3 years already for this operation that they kept saying, oh, let's see how it goes. Eventually, it was extremely urgent. She was about to lose her sight. And they said, we're sorry, but the waiting list is 2 years. And she elected to have her operation done privately. Luckily, she's married. Her and her husband are retired. They're quite well off. So she paid to have her operation privately. That you can do. But I'm talking about people who come to Italy to live here, banking on the fact that they're going to have free medical care, that everything's going to go wonderfully, that nothing's going to go sideways. And then they get here and they can't speak Italian. And there's people who've been living here for 10 years who still can't speak Italian or any form of Italian. And now you've got to try and negotiate this system. And you're living in the south where there's no hospital. And somehow you've got to get to the north of Italy to a teaching hospital, a big hospital, where you can see a specialist and have this now emergency operation. It's not going to happen. The chances are you're going to be stabilized and they're going to have to fly you back to America to have this major operation, or Australia, wherever. So please be aware, even if you have the 1-year medical insurance that you're obliged to pay if you come here on an elective visa, it doesn't cover all the options, all the possible options. Yes, they will save your life. Yes, you will be taken in an ambulance to an A&E. If you're in a region where there is no A&E, as we've just spoken about in the beginning of this video, in the south, in Calabria, and many small cities in Italy, which all used one satellite hospital. As the hospitals closed down, as they have been since 2008, they all had one satellite hospital that they send people into. And that's the reason why this mayor was saying, stay at home, don't go out, don't do anything risky at home, because we can quickly be inundated. So yes, there's the one hospital that's 50 kilometers away. But if all the villages from around about the region, if they're sending in their emergency cases, and those emergency cases happen to converge on one night or one weekend, we're done for. We're overwhelmed. We're quickly overwhelmed. And we don't have the funds to just call in more staff, more emergencies. So please be aware, if you're thinking of living up a hill in a beautiful little hill town, restoring a village, and living out your Italian dream, do not underestimate. My vlog, my podcasts are normally for people over 50. I've actually written over 50 on my banner now, because, you know, I'm not talking to 20-year-olds here. People are not coming to Italy at 20-year-old to find a job. There aren't any. You may be the exception, but most people watching this are retired in Italy, or at least if they are Italian citizens and they don't have any limitations on to how long they can stay here. They want to come here and spend 4 months, 2 months, whatever, and then go back to where they're living, but they'd like to be free to spend time in Italy, buy a house in Italy, all of that. A lot of the people who watch this podcast are those people who have the right as Italian citizens to come and go as they please, and to be not resident here, but just resident here for a period. If you're living in a tiny town down in Sicily, or in, as we just spoke about, in Calabria, or in the uninhabited part of Tuscany, or any region, this is a reality for you. So it's not a perfect system. Nothing is perfect in life. And the same could happen in France. I mean, you might live in a tiny village in France and you would have to get to the nearest teaching hospital. I'm simply telling you how it works in Italy and how it has worked for the 22 years I've lived here. Just about every hospital in Milan and Torino and Padua and Bologna, the southern people come and have their operations and their cancer treatment here, because this is where the oncology centers are. This is where the specialists are. And they just are not. And in the 22 years I've been here, never has been. The facilities just aren't there. So yes, there is, you may get a doctor. Yes, you may get a little clinic. I don't know the level of care. I mean, the big cities of Sicily, Palermo, and Catania, of course, they have a hospital, of course, the two big cities. But remember, there's the whole of Sicily that they have to cover. So if you have very good care that you could, and you have family back in the States or Australia or South Africa or wherever you're coming from, or the EU, if you can go back to your mother and father or your family and in an emergency, and you can be repatriated, reflown back to America for healthcare, that's fine. But just be aware that you're not covering every single option. But if you're not in that situation, if you're a single person and you're coming here on your Social Security and you don't have massive savings and you just have basic healthcare to cover you, be aware that it's going to be a very rocky road, and it cannot be ignored when you're making your calculations as to whether you should buy a house here, whether you should live here, what you should do here. Please, please, please do your homework. I've put a playlist in the description box, and I've covered various aspects of this before. But Italian healthcare, know what you're signing up for. Know what you will be subject to if you come and live here. Okay. If you're living somewhere else and you're still part of the UK medical care and you can be flown home and operated there, that's different. Okay. I'm sure they also have their problems. I'm simply telling you, do not think that when you come to all your medical problems are going to be over. They won't be. Number one, dental is never covered. And number two, many things are considered elective, and some people would argue whether they're elective or not. Okay, so that was there was a fun discussion, wasn't it? The beautiful little town of Belcastro and their very ironic mayor, who basically told them, go out, stay at home, don't get sick, don't have an accident, don't have wild sex, don't do anything, because if you need to go to hospital, we can't help you. Our hospital is inundated and it's 40 kilometers down a winding dirt road, and it's not going to work. Sorry. So that's how we started this discussion. But yeah, I'm happy to entertain any questions. You can either drop down in the chat box right now and tell me which city you're joining from. When you watch this back, and I'm sure you will, please be aware that it's not only the South that could have issues. You could be in a small village anywhere, in any region, in any province of Italy. As I mentioned, I have always lived within 1 hour and mostly 40 minutes from a major medical teaching hospital. And that's been my journey in Italy. And I would say to you, if you are over 60, I suggest you follow my example. That's what I'm saying. And I'm happy to say that, because that doesn't mean that you have to come and live near Milan. I live on Lago Maggiore. It's an hour from Milan now, but an hour from Rome, an hour from Padua, an hour from Bologna. These are the realities. If you want to live in a region that is not near a major medical center, then I suggest you make some kind of plan that in the case of a major emergency, I'm talking heart attack, stroke, whatever, major car accident, that you can be repatriated to where you were before you came to spend your time in Italy. And that may be EU. You may have rights as an EU person to have full medical care here. You may not even need health insurance, but I'm telling you that it would in some ways be cheaper, easier, and save your life if you could be repatriated home at your cost, of course, at your cost. But these are the realities, and please don't ignore this. If you're retired, semi-retired like me, still have to work, please bear this in mind. It's one of the major decisions. This tessera sanitaria from Italy, what does it actually entitle you to? And what are the realities? How do you get to see your doctor? How do you get your family doctor? So you can watch this back. And I hope somebody kindly maybe goes down into the comments and points out where all the major points are. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this update today. Let me know when you watch this back if you enjoyed it, if you have any questions. And remember, if you're watching me for the first time, my name's Amanda. Tell me in the box down there in the comments. If you watch me for the first time, tell me that you're here for the first time. And I will see you on the next one about moving to Italy, moving to Europe, France, Portugal, Spain, all the countries I know about. So today was all about Italy and medical care. You can go watch this back. And as I mentioned, this weekend we're going to talk about Ireland. I'm going to talk about what has happened in Ireland, another European Union country. So take care. See you on the next one. From Amanda here in Italy on Lago Maggiore. Take care. Don't forget, enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Have a nice cappuccino. Bye, 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 Bye bye. Bye.